You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cricket Podcast, where we will be going over Pakistan's comeback as they level the series with England 1-1. We'll be talking Women's World Cup, and if we've got time, we'll have a moment to check in on India's comeback v New Zealand. I'm Jack Cope. I'm joined today by Max Rowe-Brown. How are you doing, Max?
Hello, I'm very well, thank you, Jack. It's been a very interesting few days in the world of cricket, hasn't it? In all forms: Test cricket, men's Test cricket, women's 2020 cricket. It's been some interesting stuff. Looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah, before we get going, just a shout out to our main sponsor, Manscaped. You can get 20% off plus free shipping with the code CricketPod if you head over to manscaped.com. We will revisit them with some more content later in the podcast. But for now, Max, why don't you give us a summary of what happened in the second test?
Okay. Well, it was all about the pitch, wasn't it, once again? And the main news on said pitch was when Pakistan said shortly before the game that they were going to use the same track as they did in the first test, which, as we all remember, was dead in terms of life for the bowlers. And they decided, well, if you want a pitch that gets a result, let's use the same pitch again because we'll get some spin. Pakistan then packed their side with 7 spin bowling options and decided that that was their best route to victory. There were some questions about whether that was the right approach to take to preparing a pitch for Test cricket. I don't think it's ever been done before. There were some giant fans at either end to dry it out after it had been extensively watered. It was all comical, as one would expect from anything to do with Pakistan cricket and preparations. But it's what they did. It's what we ended up with. And what we ended up with, Jack, was actually a really good game of cricket. In such a situation, obviously, the toss was going to be quite important. Pakistan won that, and they put on 366 in their first innings, led by the man who'd come in to replace Babar Azam, Kamran Ghulam, who scored 118 off 224 balls in a really quite impressive knock as Pakistan had lost a couple of early wickets. 19-2 they were. It looked as Leach struck early to get rid of both Abdul Shafiq and Sham Masood. Looked like the plan might have backfired spectacularly and that we were in for an absolute disaster of a test match and lots of questions being asked. But nope. Ghulam came in, really impressive innings, steadied the ship, and it was a good effort from Pakistan. I think England probably a bit disappointed that they hadn't curtailed the innings a bit sooner. There's a little bit of a rearguard action from Noman and Ahmed Jamal, led them to 366, but that was a decent score. England would have seen that there was batting to be had. It wasn't a terrible pitch by any stretch of the imagination, and were well in the game. And that's very much what it looked like when Ben Duckett hit his 100 off 129 balls, 114 he scored, and England were cruising at 211 for 2. And then England's old nemesis happened: a collapse in the face of a spinning ball. Sajid Khan, who can only be described as a character, and then you can pick out what you like out of that, took 7 for 111 to spin a web, destroy England, whatever it was. They fell to 291, having looked very well placed to take first innings lead. And that's where it all started to go wrong, really. It was a case of having to keep Pakistan down to a pretty low score if they were going to have any chance of winning the test, as the pitch did start to deteriorate quite a lot and spin heavily. But that wasn't to be the case, as a combination of some decent counter-punching batting and some fairly average catching meant that it was 297 was always going to be too much for England to chase. And so it proved. 144 all out, 152 run win for Pakistan. They're back. Their spinners took 20 wickets, Jack. The plan was a work of genius. Pakistan are cricket's great thinkers.
Well, I mean, who could argue? Who could argue with that sort of statement?
The evidence is there. It's in front of you.
Exactly. Like, only an idiot could look at Pakistan and not come to the conclusion that they are cricket's great thinkers. Yeah, I mean, look, should we probably start with the pitch? It was an avant-garde, let's say, approach to preparing a test match wicket. And obviously it sort of worked. Well, sort of, they won the match. It did work. The plan worked. The plan to fix the wicket did work. I do wonder. I mean, like the thing that struck me, Max, having watched quite a lot of the test, good time zone, Pakistan for watching Test cricket. The thing that struck me was that perhaps if England had won the toss, they'd have won the game. Like, is that an oversimplification? Like, it just got worse and worse and worse and worse. Like, it was okay until probably. I mean, I wouldn't say specifically when. Yeah, I wouldn't say it was specifically when like Ben Duckett got out, but it didn't look like he was massively challenged, and every other England batter was massively challenged. Now that might be because Ben Duckett's a good player of spin, which he is, but it might be that the pitch really did start to go downhill. Pakistan backed pretty well in their second innings, I suppose, as well. So perhaps there are some England limitations in the defeat, but I do think England probably would have won had they batted first. Is that oversimplifying the plan?
I think it's definitely a point that needs addressing because the toss was obviously a massive advantage, wasn't it? Because the way the pitch did get worse and worse, we saw that, and it came to a point where it was a little bit of a lottery on the batting stakes by the end. But we've seen it so many times when someone is batting really nicely, they get out, and suddenly the pitch is doing all sorts, having not been doing anything before, and that's that doesn't chime logically, does it, with the way you expect the world to work scientifically? Someone gets out and then suddenly the pitch is a disaster.
Yeah.
I think so. I think there is an element of new batters coming in and not being able to adapt to the surface or be as good at playing spin as Ben Duckett was. But there's a definite case that the toss was a huge advantage in this game. But in fairness, that's nothing new in Test cricket, is it? That's been the case in many games in the past. So I think it's a point to be raised that England possibly would have won the game if they'd batted first. But I guess the counter to that is that England did collapse a bit in that first innings, despite having lost the toss. The pitch did get harder. I think the statistics around how much the ball was spinning pretty much show that after tea, that was when the ball started spinning more on the greater angles of turn. So there is some evidence to suggest that there was a turning point, if you excuse the poor wordplay, and that did make it harder for England at that point. But they were in such a good position that they could have got up to that Pakistan score, I think, even despite the fact that the pitch had deteriorated, and it was a case of England not being able to play the situation as well as Pakistan's batters did. And that's, I guess, where Pakistan were trying to get that advantage and where they thought they had advantage. Maybe not with the quality of the spinners, but with the ability of the batters to play spin is where the difference was. And then again, I mean, there was that over, wasn't there, where England dropped Salman Iyer twice when he was on 4 and 6 in that second innings, and he went on to make 63. And that basically, along with that little cameo from Sajid Khan, took it from a unlikely chase into a impossible chase. So there's elements that England will look at where they had agency over the game, despite having lost the toss, that meant they maybe had a shot at winning it. So I think it is overly simplistic to say that the toss, England, if they won the toss, they would have won the game, but it mattered. You can't get away from the fact it mattered.
Yeah, I mean, I think it did. I mean, I do think as well, from Pakistan's point of view. I know I've spoken like at length about how pitch doctoring is really not good for cricket, and I kind
of rate this though because it's just so brazen and obvious.
That's kind of what I was going to go on to
in the first test.
That's what I was going to go on to. Like, I would rather watch cricket on this pitch than the other pitch. And from Pakistan's point of view, in a world where you can pitch doctor, you might as well play coin toss cricket versus just like getting hammered all around the ground and your bowlers falling to pieces and all the humiliation of the first test. Like, at least you got a puncher's chance. Obviously more than a puncher's chance. They've won handily in this test. They're competitive on this wicket. They're not competitive on the other wickets that they played on recently. What was it? Six matches that they didn't win. There's probably a question from England's perspective, moving away from the pitch. are they still too dependent on Joe Root, Max, to be a functioning team on surfaces that aren't absolute roads? In the first innings, while Joe Root's in, things are going well. They're 3 for 211. After Joe Root's in, they're all out for 291. That's not great. And then in the second innings, Root only gets 18. There's not much action, I suppose, from him in that second innings. But in an alternative universe where England got even somewhat close to this score, you would think that Root would be the guy that got the highest score. As I said, that may or may not be true. What do you think?
It's probably true, isn't it? Like, England still aren't that good at playing in conditions like this. It's not that surprising because they don't do it very often. It's not something they've been brought up on. Joe Root's a freak, and is therefore able to do it. I think there's an element of in the past England would have expected Ben Stokes to get involved as well in a slightly different way to Joe Root, more of a counter punching kind of put the spinners off. The being able to just bowl in a spot and tie England up, whereas Joe Root's just immensely under control in these kinds of things. Ben Stokes is, I guess, a bit more counter attacking and trying to put the spinners off. And I don't think any of the other players in that middle order, obviously Ben Duckett opening is a fantastic player of spin. I don't think any of the other players in that middle order know what their game plan is against spin. I think that's a bit of a problem. They're clearly skillful players and they should be able, you would think, to come up with a way of playing in these conditions, but there's I guess not a lot of practice at it and not knowing the best way to approach it. In that second innings, England pretty much went for that Australia and India approach of we're going to sweep everything, because that worked quite well for Pakistan, and when the ball's turning a bit more, cross-batted shots, I guess, are a bit safer. And there wasn't that much variable bounce, I suppose, was there? It was keeping low, but there wasn't a lot of up and down. So it was a viable tactic, but it looked a bit silly in the end. And that kind of speaks to that point, I think, in that they kind of went for pull a lucky dip out of the bag. How are we going to play this game? And then try and do that for the entire innings, rather than having something to rely on internally and knowing how to play those kinds of innings. So I guess the TLDR of that is, yes, Joe Root's really good.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to criticize a team for relying on a guy who averages 60 in the last 4 years. That seems like logically the sort of guy you probably should be relying on. Yeah, it's absolutely fair to say that good teams aren't completely reliant on one guy in certain conditions. England on a flat pitch are going to be dominant. England on a seaming wicket, because of their bowling, will normally be pretty handy. On a wicket that turns, it's Joe Root. It's Joe Root or bust, or like freak innings, basically. Obviously they won that test in like stuff that is unreplicably outrageous, basically. As you were sort of touching on, Root seems to be the only one with a technique that is replicable in spinning conditions and that will bring him runs. So we'll see how that develops. It's quite hard to say what will happen in the next test. We don't even know where it's going to be. I think for sure. Yeah, it's supposed to be Rawalpindi, isn't it? But I think it's supposed to be Rawalpindi.
Yes.
You're looking at me like it might not be. Yes, I think it's supposed to be there.
First, I've heard that it might not be at Rawalpindi.
They were talking about playing the next one in Multan again
on the same pitch.
I don't know. Look, things might have moved on since then, but there were some rumors.
There's always hijinks, aren't there? Who knows?
So England might not actually be tested in these conditions until the next time they go to Sri Lanka, whenever that is.
And that's probably why they don't get any better at it, because I mean, on the one hand, they don't have the practice. I mean, and then they don't have time to set aside a part of their calendar to go and try and practice playing on these wickets. I don't know, build a wicket somewhere, or just spend a few months in Sri Lanka playing cricket amongst themselves in these wickets, or against random domestic sides. They don't have time to do that in their cricket calendar because it's ridiculous. So,
no, and to be fair, why would you want to? I think it's
that's the second. They don't have time to do it, and then the second point is, what's the point anyway? If
it's easier to turn up
in a couple of years when you go to Sri Lanka.
It's easier to turn up and occasionally lose than to completely rework your entire game for
to win a series.
Where it's it's tricky. Like it's
because all you really want to do is win the Ashes in Australia.
Well, I mean that effectively is it, and I think probably what we learned from this test, England could close the gap on Pakistan in terms of on these kind of pitches. Like I think that would be achievable. And when they've been to Sri Lanka recently, they've been pretty handy. I think they've won maybe their last 5 tests there, maybe their last 6 tests. But they've been dominant in Sri Lanka. They're not going to close the gap on India. Not even really worth trying. The gap is too big. Maybe when Ashford and Jadeja go, the gap will get a little bit smaller. I don't know. But at the moment, the gap is just simply too cavernous. And as New Zealand are finding out right now during this conversation, what is it? 400 million for 3.
425 for 4 now. They've got another one. Yeah.
They were bowled out for 46 in the first innings, India, and they're probably odds on to win the flipping test match at this point. Like,
it's what they do.
Yeah, it's just you're not going to win in India. So, like, in a way, why even bother trying? At least you could fluke an Ashes. Like, that's possible. Like, there's, you get a fast bowler
guy who bounces it.
Like, it could happen. Every 20 years or so, a few people retire. Maybe Steve Smith's hands will have gone next year, and he won't get any runs. And maybe Marnus Labuschagne will have an injury or something like that. Then it could be all to play for. Probably won't be. Probably be 4-0. But there's that gap again is a little bit more closable. In terms of learning to play in spinning conditions, I have sympathy for some of these players. Like it looks bad when you're launching your bat into orbit and you're getting stumped by the world's slowest bowler. People will look at Harry Brooks' numbers and rightly point out that he only averages 23 against slow left arm, and that is something that a truly great batter wouldn't do.
I think it's just because he really wants to replicate Kevin Peterson.
But also from Harry Brooks' point of view, he's probably like, yeah, but I've in my entire Test career so far, I've faced 23 overs of it. I might as well just get out and move on to the next game. Like I'm really good at everything else. Why would I put myself through the effort? I'm not even sure it's 30 overs, not 23 overs. 30 overs out of 300 have been slow left arm. And you'll probably get Harry Brook out, but I don't know. No, you've got to prioritise things, haven't you? If I was Harry Brook, I wouldn't be thinking, how do I improve against... Well, maybe I would be thinking this.
Unless,
I wouldn't be going all...
As soon as Harry Brook comes into bat, the slow left armer comes on and within 2 overs he's out. Then you've got to do something about it. But that's...
Look, But I mean, I think bigger picture, though, there's other things. If I was Harry Brook, there's other things I would work on. He's working on bowling. I'm not sure I'd be working on bowling.
Probably not the one either.
But I think I've made that point. I think I probably made that point. One final thing I wanted to talk about from this test, Max, was Ben Stokes getting angry and tired and emotional out. I don't think in the outfield and having to apologise to the team. What did you make of that? Were you embarrassed?
I don't know. I don't know why he felt the need to apologise. To be honest, that passage of play from England was absolutely abhorrent. That Jamie Smith's drop was one of the worst things I've ever seen. Like, I won't go on in too hard because it just looked like such a tired bit of cricket. It was like one of those freak, really bad things that just happens. I'm not sure you can put too much analysis into it, but like, it was a major turning it could have been a major turning point for England to really give them a sniff, and both that drop and then Joe Root and then just the fielding aside, it would frustrate you, wouldn't it? I think you can. I apologise to the dressing room, but I don't know. Going into the media, I mean, fair play to him for doing it. Like, he's really working on keeping this positive atmosphere. So I kind of rate it, but I don't feel it was particularly necessary or anything.
Yeah, I wonder as well whether it was a little bit of a distraction technique. Like, I'm going to talk about this thing so that we don't have to talk about
bit of dead cat theory.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, dead cat. If you don't know what it is, like if you've got a difficult situation to deal with, sometimes it's best to bring up something else, like a dead cat, and get everyone talking about the dead cat instead of
the fact that you've been given loads of free tickets to Taylor Swift or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. All been bowled out for 144 by
by Noman Ali.
By Noman Ali. By two blokes with about 15 caps between them. The one thing we haven't said here is fair play to Noman and Sajid Khan. 20 wickets between them.
Yeah, first time that's happened since 1972. That spinners sharing all 20 wickets in a.
They bowled pretty well. I mean, Sajid in the first innings, I thought was genuinely excellent. Like, really threatening. Kind of a go on.
I have so much time for Sajid Khan. He is a legend. He comes in. He's obviously got the mental celebration. He's like wide-eyed, winding everyone up. He looks a little bit to me like we were saying in the Discord, like he's got real amateur Saturday League cricket vibes. Like everyone knows the guy who is Sajid Khan in their league. But he also reminds me a little bit of he looks a little bit like Jack Leach, but if he's on crystal meth and has gone mental.
Yeah,
I got that
there is
kind
an
of
element of that.
But then he went and did an interview at the end of the day where they're asking about his celebration. He was just like mouthing off about how he gets picked and then dropped the entire time despite playing well. And just absolute head case. So much fun.
Yeah, I mean, I got a lot of time for him. It's sort of astonishing to me that they actually genuinely seem to think that Abrar was a better player than him. Even on the absolute roads. I mean, like he'd have been smashed all over the place last week as well, but it might not have been smashed as badly. So fair. I mean, I haven't got much more to say on those two. I think we've probably covered this test. Anyone else from a Pakistan point of view that needs some credit?
Well, obviously, Kamran Ghulam, who came in and replaced Babar Azam. It was a pretty big thing for Pakistan to drop their talisman, and there was all the nonsense about Ramiz Raja coming out and saying that it should have been up to Babar Azam whether he was dropped, which is decidedly not how picking a cricket team works, but fair enough. And he's coming in, and there's a lot of pressure there, isn't there, to perform more so than there would be just on your debut, which is hard enough and trying to arrest a really bad run from Pakistan in Test cricket. And he looked like quite a good player. So maybe they should have brought him in before. He looks solid. Not like a kind of guy who's coming in and playing them like glorious fluent drives, and you think look, that's a beautiful to watch. But he just looked like a really solid, good cricketer. The kind of thing that Pakistan maybe have been missing for a little while. But yeah, so good on him for that innings. Well played.
I thought the furore around Babar Azam being dropped was a little bit weird. Like, I understand that he's like a pretty good player, especially. I mean, actually, if you were going to look at his numbers, if we're going to be brutal about Babar Azam for a moment, you would say he is a world-class ODI player, an all-right T20 player, maybe above average T20 player because he doesn't get out very much, doesn't score very quickly, but doesn't get out very much. So we'll give him credit there. And you would say he is probably an above average test batter. Do you know what his average is?
So is that 44 or something?
44. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you get to play. I mean, I obviously not for his entire career, but at this point in time, he has played 16 matches in Pakistan. They'll be mainly on roads. Fair play. He averages 60, 58. He's done his job there, but that means you're failing in a lot of other places. Averages 25 in Australia. That's not very good, is it?
No. Oh, it's Zimbabwe,
36.
isn't it? What is the average against Zimbabwe?
1.
Oh, that much must be
So-
white ball cricket then.
Yeah, I think it might be just 1. Yeah, I think it was a really obvious decision to drop a guy who averages 44, who's been on a really, really bad run of form.
Yeah.
I know he's a great ODI batter, but it's not an ODI, so don't expect him to produce the same outcomes. I mean, we talk about format comparisons quite a lot on this podcast, but it seems like that would be really obvious to somebody who actually has to Aleem Dar, selector Aleem Dar. I mean, actually he comes in and drops Babar, doesn't it? Maybe it's really obvious to Aleem Dar, but everyone else in the Pakistan think tank just assumes that they're the same thing when they're not. But I'm actually quite underwhelmed by Babar Azam's test numbers. The noise around Babar, I just automatically sort of assumed until I looked it up.
He was
when
one of the best 4 batters in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, he's gonna it'll be high 40s. I didn't think it would be in the 50s or anything like that. But I thought, wait, he plays in Pakistan a lot. It's runs for fun there, isn't it? Like he'll definitely be high 40s, but it's like Ian Bell levels. There's nothing wrong with Ian Bell. Ian Bell's a good player, an above average test player for quite a long time, and
yeah.
I think
I'm pretty sure the start of this podcast was predicated on trying to get Ian Bell back into the England setup.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, and we were right. Even to this day, bring him back. Bring. If we have Bell, then
He can play spin.
Exactly. But Babar Azam, he's probably closer to the Pakistani Ian Bell in Test cricket than the Pakistani Joe Root. Like there were people genuinely saying that Pakistan were dropping their best ever batter, and it's just he's probably not even close to the best batter in this team. He might be the 3rd or 4th best batter in this team. He's just a guy. Sorry,
a mortal, a mere mortal. He's just a normal man.
He's just a normal man. Just So yeah, that's my thoughts on Babar. I don't know if you had anything. Only 9 test tons. I mean, like the people talk this guy up like he's Pakistan's Don Bradman. He's way down the list of Pakistani test batters. Way down.
Yeah,
not even in the conversation.
I agree. I was surprised. I was surprised as well with that record, and I think it's that the ODI stuff blinding people's perception of how good he is in red ball cricket.
I would like to, just before we wrap up, I'd maybe roll back on him being the 3rd or 4th best batter in the team. No, I think he is Pakistan's Ian Bell, but I think you can probably make a case that one of Abdullah Shafiq, Saud Shakil, or Rizwan is better than him. But I don't think all 3 are. Yeah. So, I taketh away and I giveth back. Credit to Babar,
the good Lord himself.
Yes. Anything else, Max? Before we
No, I'm quite looking forward to the 3rd test now. Good. I'm glad that it's 1-1. Glad we got a result. It was quite a good fun. And bring on game number 3.
Cool. If it's a draw, I win the prediction. So
yeah, I think if England win, I win. I think I went 2-1 England.
Well.
Both in it for the first time in God knows how long.
We will take a break, and then we will come back from the break, and we will talk about more cricket.
Good.
Goodbye.
That's how the show works.